The Arizona night swallowed sound like a tomb swallows light. Delaney Garrett ran through the darkness, boots pounding against stone, her 46 years forgotten in the primal rhythm of survival. Blood painted her left shoulder where fabric had torn the wound, screaming with each labored breath. Behind her, voices shouted orders she could not decipher, punctuated by the crack of rifle fire that split the air too close, too real. She dove behind a boulder, rough stone biting into her palms as she pressed herself against its surface. Her revolver hung heavy in her right hand. 6 rounds remaining. She had counted. She always counted. The moon hung thin and indifferent overhead, casting skeletal shadows across the Badlands. Somewhere in that maze of rock and scrub, men hunted her. Men who knew her name. Men who wanted something she could never surrender. A voice cut through the darkness too near. There. By the ridge! Delaney's copper-colored eyes narrowed. She steadied her breathing, raised the Colt with hands that had not forgotten their training despite 8 years of deliberate forgetting. The figure appeared silhouetted against starlight. She fired. The muzzle flash painted the world in brief, violent gold, then darkness again, then nothing. The screen went black, 3 days earlier. Dawn arrived over Copper Ridge like a reluctant promise, all pale light and uncertain shadows. The Garrett Ranch sat at the base of the Dragoon foothills, 100 acres of hard-won survival carved from unforgiving earth. The 2-room cabin showed its age in weathered wood and patched roof, but the fences stood straight and the stable sat solid, built by hands that understood how little separated shelter from exposure in this country. Delaney woke not from nightmare, but from sound. A horse screaming. She bolted upright, instinct overriding thought. Her feet found boots beside the bed before her mind fully registered consciousness. The screaming continued, wild and terrified, the kind of sound that raised hair on the back of the neck and sent ice through the veins. She was running before the cabin door fully opened. The stable loomed ahead in the pre-dawn gloom. Inside, Ashwin thrashed against his stall, the silver-dun stallion's eyes rolling white with panic. Foam flecked his neck. His hooves struck wood with enough force to splinter boards. But no predator crouched in the shadows. No snake coiled in the straw. No visible threat existed to justify the terror that had seized him. Delaney approached slowly, hands extended, murmuring words in Apache her grandfather had taught her decades ago, when the world was different and she was someone else. Words for calming frightened animals. Words that tasted of childhood and loss and things buried too deep for daylight. The stallion's panic began to ebb, replaced by something worse. Recognition. As if he had seen something that defied his understanding of safety. Footsteps behind her, quick and light. What happened? He never acts like this. Lily stood in the stable doorway, 19 years old and wrapped in a blanket, against the morning chill. Her blonde hair caught the first rays of sun, turning it to burnished gold. Her blue eyes. Clara's eyes held concern but not fear. Fear required experience, and Delaney had worked hard to keep experience at a distance. Someone was here. Delaney knelt, examining the packed earth floor with eyes that read ground the way scholars read text. The dirt spoke to her in a language learned through blood and necessity. Bootprints faint but deliberate. Size 10, perhaps 11. Heavy tread on the right side, suggesting a man who favored that leg or carried weight unevenly. The prints led to the stall, circled it, then retreated, but the lock remained intact. Delaney's fingers traced the mechanism. Fresh scratches marred the metal around the keyhole, nearly invisible unless you knew to look. Not cut, picked, which required skill and patience and the kind of criminal expertise that did not belong in this quiet corner of Arizona. She stood pulse quickening in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. The note was pinned to the stable door at eye level. She had missed it in her rush to reach Ashwind. A single piece of paper edges crisp handwriting, careful and deliberate, and threaded through the top corner, catching the growing light like spider silk a silver thread. Delaney pulled the note free. Her hands steady when firing a weapon or tracking a man across 100 miles of Badlands trembled as she unfolded the paper. The child of blood calls to blood. 8 years is long enough. Return what was taken or I will. The words swam in her vision. The stable, the horse, Lily standing in the doorway, all of it seemed suddenly insubstantial, like a stage set that might collapse at any moment to reveal the truth beneath. The truth she had buried. The truth that it had found her anyway. Mama, what does it mean? Delaney's throat constricted. Mama. A word earned through years of careful love and deliberate protection. A word that now felt like a lie waiting to detonate. She positioned herself between Lily and the note, and forced her expression into something resembling calm. It was a mask she had worn for 8 years. It felt paper thin now. Nothing. Just someone's idea of a joke. But even as the words left her mouth, she was pulling a match from her pocket, striking it against the door frame, touching flame to paper. The note caught immediately, curling and blackening as it burned. Lily's eyes widened. Why would you burn it if it's nothing? Stay in the house today. Mama, you're scaring me. Good, Delaney thought, but did not say. Fear keeps you safe. Fear keeps you alert. Fear keeps you alive when comfort gets you killed. Instead, she said, I need to ride into town, talk to Sheriff Thorne. You'll stay here, bolt the doors, and if anyone comes, anyone at all that you don't know, you use the rifle under my bed." Lily was not a child anymore, had not been for some time. At 19, she stood nearly as tall as Delaney, with the same sharp intelligence in her eyes and the same stubborn set to her jaw. But where Delaney's hair showed silver threads of hard years survived Lily's, remained the color of summer wheat. Where Delaney's hands bore scars from a life deliberately hidden, Lily's remained unmarked by anything worse than rope burn and kitchen accidents. She deserved to stay unmarked. That was the point of everything. "You're lying to me." The accusation hung between them in the stable's dusty air. Delaney wanted to deny it, wanted to maintain the careful fiction they had built together over 16 years. But she had learned long ago that children knew when truth was withheld, even if they could not name what truth was missing. "I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From the past. From blood that calls to blood. From choices I made when you were too young to remember and too innocent to understand. From things that don't concern you yet." It was the wrong answer. She knew it the moment the words formed. Lily's expression shuddered hurt, giving way to the kind of cold distance that opened chasms between people who loved each other. "Fine. I'll stay. But Mama, whatever this is hiding, it won't make it go away." The girl turned and walked back toward the cabin blanket trailing behind her like a discarded banner. Delaney watched her go and felt the weight of every lie, every omission, every carefully constructed half-truth settling onto her shoulders like stones. When Lily disappeared inside, Delaney allowed herself one moment of weakness. She pressed her forehead against Ashwin's neck, breathing in the familiar scent of horse and hay and safety. The stallion had calmed, but tension still ran through his muscles. He knew. Animals always knew when the world had shifted beneath them. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the horse, to the morning, to ghosts only she could see. "I thought we had more time." The memory came unbidden, as memories do when defenses crumble. She was 38, again younger, but somehow older, harder, but somehow more breakable. Blood covered everything. The desert floor, her hands, the woman dying in front of her. Clara Bennett was 26 and beautiful, even in death, blonde hair matted with dust and darker things, blue eyes fading like evening sky surrendering to night. She held a bundle 3 years old and mercifully unconscious, wrapped in blankets that had once been white. "Please," Clara's voice was barely audible, wet with the sound of punctured lungs. "Don't let him take her." Delaney knelt, her own shoulder wound forgotten in the presence of this greater tragedy. Who did this?" "His men. They found me. I thought I was far enough. Thought I had time." Clara coughed, blood speckling her lips. "Promise me. Promise you won't let Lily grow up in blood." "I'll get you help. Just hold on." But Clara was shaking her head, using the last of her strength to lift the child toward Delaney. "No time. No help. Just promise. Promise me." Behind them, gunfire. Rowan's voice shouting, the sound of men dying. "I promise." Clara smiled then, a terrible, beautiful expression of relief and surrender. "Her name is Lily. Tell her I loved her more than breathing." Then she was gone, the light leaving her eyes like water through cupped hands, impossible to hold no matter how tightly you tried. Delaney blinked back in the stable, back in the present, back in the life she had built from the wreckage of that day. Her shoulder ached where the old bullet scar never quite healed right. 16 years. Lily had been 3 years old that terrible day at Samaran Pass, just a child pulled from her mother's dying arms. Now she stood 16 years older, 19 and nearly grown, asking questions Delaney had hoped to delay answering forever. Phantom pain, the doctor called it. But Delaney knew better. Some wounds do not close because they are not meant to. Some wounds are supposed to remind you of the price of survival. She stood, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the cabin to prepare for whatever came next. Copper Ridge existed because men needed somewhere to drink, and women needed somewhere to trade, and everyone needed somewhere to pretend civilization had followed them into the wilderness. The town occupied a dusty crossroads, 24 buildings arranged with optimistic permanence around a central square. The sheriff's office sat on the north end, the general store on the south. Between them, life happened in increments small enough to feel manageable and large enough to matter. Delaney rode in just past 8 in the morning to find the square already buzzing with unusual energy. Knots of people gathered, voices raised in the particular pitch of fear masquerading as outrage. She recognized the signs. Something had disturbed the careful equilibrium towns like this required to survive. She tied her mare to the post outside the sheriff's office and paused, listening. "I'm telling you, it was deliberate. Someone broke my clinic window but didn't take anything. What kind of thief does that?" Dr. Iris Calloway stood in the center of a group of townspeople, her gray, streaked black hair pulled back in its customary bun, her dark eyes sharp with intelligence and suspicion. At 52, she remained the only doctor for 40 miles in any direction, which gave her authority beyond her profession. People listened when Iris Calloway spoke. "Same at my place." Garrett, Samuel Tate, who ran the largest ranch in the valley, shifted his considerable weight from foot to foot. "Horses spooked last night. All of them. Like something scared them half to death. But we found no sign of predators. No tracks except human ones, and those were deliberately left obvious, like someone wanted us to know they'd been there. The sheriff's office, too. This from a voice Delaney knew well. Ezra Thorne emerged from the building behind her, his weathered face grave beneath the brim of his hat. 60 years old, and every one of them visible in the lines around his eyes, Thorne had been sheriff of Copper Ridge for 20 years. Before that, he had been other things he did not discuss. Someone marked my door. Silver thread tied to the handle. His eyes found Delaney, held her gaze with an intensity that suggested volumes of unspoken communication. Same at your place. She nodded once, a minute movement that nevertheless conveyed everything necessary. The crowd's attention shifted toward her, and Delaney felt the familiar discomfort of being seen. She had spent 8 years cultivating invisibility, the art of being present but unremarkable. A widow who trained horses and kept to herself, nothing more, nothing worth noticing. But the way people looked at her now suggested that invisibility was fracturing. Mrs. Garrett. Samuel Tate approached his expression a mixture of concern and something harder to define. Sheriff says you might know something about this, that you've seen trouble before. The careful phrasing did not escape her notice. Seen trouble, not caused it, not been part of it. The distinction mattered in ways civilians rarely understood. I might, she allowed, but I need to speak with Sheriff Thorne first, privately. Says Madame. The crowd muttered but dispersed, drawn away by Iris Calloway's firm suggestion that standing around speculating helped no one, and there was work to be done. The doctor caught Delaney's eye as she herded people away, a look that promised a conversation later whether Delaney wanted one or not. When the square cleared, Thorne gestured toward his office. Inside. The interior smelled of old coffee, older leather, and the particular mustiness that accumulated in buildings where papers piled up faster than anyone filed them. Thorne closed the door, drew the curtains, and turned to face her with an expression she had not seen in 8 years. The expression of a man about to deliver news that would shatter carefully constructed peace. Silver thread, he said without preamble. That's Silas Kane's calling card. The name hit like a physical blow. Delaney's hand found the back of the nearest chair, gripping it to keep herself upright. That's impossible. He doesn't know I'm here. No one knows. He knows. Thorne moved to his desk, unlocked a drawer, removed a paper. This came on yesterday's stage from Tucson. He handed it to her. A wanted poster edges still crisp from recent printing. The face that stared back at her from the sketch was older than she remembered, but unmistakable. Silas Kane, 58 years old, scar running from left temple to jaw, eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. Reward $5,000. Crime suspected involvement in territorial smuggling operation. But it was the handwriting at the bottom that stopped her breath. Seeking information regarding missing girl Lillian Kane, missing since 1877. Age now 19. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Last seen with female U.S. Marshal near Cimarron Pass. Substantial reward for information leading to her safe return. The words blurred. The office tilted. Somewhere far away Thorne was speaking, but his voice came muffled through the roar of blood in her ears. Kidnapped. Not rescued. Not saved. Not given a chance at life away from blood and violence and the legacy of men who chose darkness. Kidnapped. Delaney. Thorne's hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm, anchoring her to the present. Breathe. Just breathe. She did, drawing air into lungs that felt crushed beneath the weight of revelation. When vision cleared, she found Thorne watching her with something that might have been pity if pity did not require distance. This was closer, personal. He's been searching for 16 years, Thorne said quietly. Every town, every territory, every whisper of a woman matching your description with a young blonde girl, and now he's found you. How tight? Don't know for certain. But Silas Kane didn't survive this long by being careless. If he found you, he did it deliberately, carefully. And he's not coming as an outlaw. Thorne tapped the poster. He's coming as a grandfather looking for his stolen granddaughter. And from a legal standpoint, he has a case. The words settled like poison in her stomach. I have adoption papers. Not filed legally. You were hiding, remember, no formal court proceedings, no official records, just a private arrangement that you and Rowan handled yourselves. Thorne's voice gentled. I'm not saying you did wrong, Delaney. I'm saying from the law's perspective, what you did looks exactly like what Silas claims. She wanted to rage. Wanted to explain about Clara's dying wish about the blood and the fear and the desperate promise made to a woman who had run as far as she could and still not been far enough. Wanted to make him understand that some acts of mercy looked like crimes to people who had not stood in the moment when choices narrowed to impossible points. But Ezra Thorne already knew all of this. He had known from the beginning. Why are you telling me this? Because Silas Kane is my friend. The admission cost him something. Was my friend? He and Rowan and I grew up together. We were boys who made promises about brotherhood that we thought would last forever. And then life happened, and Rowan chose the law, and Silas chose something else, and I ended up in the middle trying to keep peace between two men I loved like blood. He moved to the window, looking out at the town he had protected for 2 decades. When Rowan died at Samaran Pass, I thought that was the end of it. Thought Silas would let it go. But a man who loses his son, then his daughter-in-law, then his grandchild to what he sees as theft, that man doesn't let go. That man spends 8 years searching. And when he finds what he's looking for, he doesn't come gentle. Delaney joined him at the window. Outside, Copper Ridge went about its business, unaware that the careful equilibrium it depended on was about to shatter. What do you want me to do, Ezra? I want you to run, take Lily, disappear again, go somewhere he'll never find you. And spend another 8 years looking over my shoulder, watching Lily grow up, wondering why we never stay anywhere long enough to matter. Better than the alternative. Which is... Thorne turned to face her fully, and in his eyes she saw the answer before he spoke it. War, between you and Silas. And in that war, Lily gets torn apart no matter who wins. The truth of it burned like acid. She had survived by avoiding exactly this kind of confrontation, by choosing anonymity over justice, by accepting that some battles could not be won without destroying everything worth fighting for. But running required somewhere to run to, and she was so tired of running. I need to go home. Check on Lily. Thorne nodded. I'll keep watch. Anything happens, anything at all, you fire 3 shots. I'll come running. She was halfway to the door when he called her name. She turned. Rowan made me promise before Samaran passed that if anything happened to him, I'd look after you and Lily. I've tried to honor that. But Delaney, if Silas comes, I don't know if I can choose between you. Do you understand? He's my friend. But so are you. So was Rowan. And I'm tired of choosing. The admission hung between them raw and honest. I understand, Ezra. And I'm not asking you to choose. Whatever happens, you do what you need to do. I'll do the same. She left before he could respond, stepping back into sunlight that felt too bright, too exposing, too honest about the darkness it failed to reach. The ride back to the ranch took 40 minutes that stretched like hours. Delaney's mind worked through scenarios, calculating odds, preparing for possibilities that ranged from hopeful to catastrophic. But beneath the tactical thinking ran a current of something colder. Fear. Not for herself. She had stopped fearing for herself somewhere in the years between becoming a U.S. Marshal and burying her husband. Fear for yourself required believing you had something left to lose, and Delaney had learned that lesson in blood and grief. But fear for Lily was different. Fear for Lily was a living thing that coiled in her chest and whispered terrible possibilities in the small hours of night. Fear for Lily was what had kept her hidden for 8 years, what had made her choose anonymity over justice, what had transformed a woman who once tracked the territory's most dangerous men into someone who trained horses and avoided attention. Fear for Lily was love in its most primal form. The ranch appeared ahead unchanged since morning. Smoke rose from the chimney. The stable doors stood open. Nothing seemed amiss. But Delaney's instincts honed through years of survival screamed warning. She dismounted at distance, tied her mare to a fence post, and approached the cabin with hand resting on the revolver at her hip. The door was unbolted. Inside, dishes from breakfast still sat unwashed. Lily's blanket lay draped across the chair where she had left it, but no Lily. Lily? The name tore from her throat, fear stripping away 8 years of careful control. Movement from the back room. Then Lily appeared hair-damp from washing, expression annoyed. I'm right here. Stop shouting. Relief hit so hard Delaney had to steady herself against the door frame. I told you to bolt the door. And I told you I'm not a child. Lily moved past her to gather the breakfast dishes. You left. I ate. I washed up. The world didn't end. But it's about to, Delaney thought. It's about to end in ways you can't imagine. She watched Lily move about the kitchen, all unconscious grace and innocent defiance, and felt the weight of secrets pressing down like physical force. How do you tell someone that the life they know is built on lies, that the mother they love killed men to save them? That somewhere out there blood calls to blood and blood always answers you don't. You protect them from knowing for as long as possible. You choose their innocence over your honesty. You carry the burden alone because that's what love requires. But Lily was looking at her now with Clara's blue eyes, and those eyes saw too much. Something happened in town. It was not a question. Delaney moved to the window, looking out at land she had worked for 8 years, land that had given her purpose after Rowan died, land that had let her pretend the past could stay buried if he refused to dig it up. People are scared. Someone's been leaving signs. Threats, maybe. Against who? Against us, against the life we built, against the lie I told you every day when I called myself your mother. Don't know yet. Ezra's investigating. Lily set down the dishes, moved to stand beside her mother. For a long moment they stood together in silence, looking out at the same view but seeing different futures. Mama, I'm not stupid. I know there are things you don't tell me. About before, about how you ended up with me. About why we don't have family, why no one visits, why you never talk about anything that happened before we came here. Delaney's throat tightened. I always thought, Lily continued, voice soft, that when I was old enough you'd tell me. That there'd be a day when you'd sit me down and explain everything. But watching you now, I'm starting to think that day's never coming. That you'd rather carry it alone forever than share it with me. The truth of it cut deeper than accusation. Some burdens, Delaney said carefully, aren't meant to be shared. Some truths don't make things better. They just hurt more people. That's not fair. You don't get to decide what I can handle. I'm your mother. That's exactly what I get to decide. Lily turned and there were tears in her eyes now, bright and angry. Are you my mother? The question detonated in the small cabin like dynamite in a mine shaft, bringing down everything built on unstable ground. Delaney could have lied. Should have lied. The lie was kinder than truth. But looking at Lily at 19 years old and demanding honesty, she found she could not add one more falsehood to the foundation of deceptions they balanced on. By choice, yes. By blood, no. Silence fell like the last shovel of dirt on a grave. Lily staggered back as if struck. Her hand found the chair, gripping it with knuckles that went white. What? Your mother's name was Clara. She died when you were 3. She asked me to take you to keep you safe, and I did. She died how? She was killed by men who worked for someone dangerous. And my father, also dead, before your mother. The words came out flat, clinical, stripped of the emotion that made them bearable. Delaney watched Lily process each revelation, saw the exact moment when childhood ended and something harder took its place. So you're not my mother. You're just someone who took me. I'm someone who loved you, who raised you, who chose you every single day for 16 years. Did I have family, real family? The question Delaney had dreaded for 16 years. Yes. Where are they? I don't know, but Lily, they were dangerous people. Your mother ran from them because she didn't want you growing up in that life. You're lying, Lily's voice broke. You're lying and I don't even know what about anymore. She ran for the door. Delaney caught her arm, but Lily jerked away with strength born of betrayal. Don't touch me. Don't lie to me anymore. Just don't. Then she was gone out the door and into the afternoon, and Delaney stood alone in the cabin that suddenly felt too empty to bear. Evening found Delaney on the porch, rifle across her lap, watching the sun bleed out across the western sky. Lily had not returned. Doctor. Iris Calloway had ridden out an hour ago to say the girl was at her clinic safe, but unwilling to come home yet. Delaney had nodded, thanked her, and resumed her vigil. Iris sat beside her now 2 women who had survived enough to understand that sometimes silence was the only honest response to devastation. She'll come around, Iris said finally. She's hurt, but she's not lost, just needs time to process. Time's the one thing we might not have. Delaney told her about Silas Kane, about the wanted poster, about 8 years of hiding coming to an end. Iris listened without interruption, her dark eyes reflecting firelight from inside the cabin. When Delaney finished, Iris was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, What are you going to do? I don't know. Running means Lily grows up never staying anywhere. Staying means facing Silas, and facing Silas means someone gets hurt. Someone's already hurt. Iris gestured toward where Lily had run. That girl's world just shattered. 19 years old and finding out everything she knew was a lie. That's the hurt you can't run from or fight your way out of. I was protecting her. I know, but protection and truth aren't always the same thing. The words stung because they were accurate. Delaney had built protection on a foundation of lies, and now the foundation was cracking, and everything built upon it threatened to collapse. Iris, if something happens to me, will you look after her? Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me anyway. The doctor's hand found hers squeezed once. I promise. But you listen to me, Delaney Garrett. That girl needs her mother. Not her biological mother, not her blood mother, but you. The woman who raised her. The woman who loved her when she didn't have to. That's the mother that matters. Tell her that? I will, but you need to believe it too. They sat together as night claimed the valley, 2 women keeping watch against darkness that came in forms more complicated than simple absence of light. Inside the cabin past midnight, Delaney stood in the doorway of Lily's empty bedroom. The room still smelled like her, that particular scent of youth and innocence that would fade all too soon. Delaney moved to the bed, sat on its edge, and allowed herself a moment of weakness. Her hand reached out, hovered over the pillow where Lily's head should have rested, then fell to cover her own face as tears finally came. Silent tears that spoke of 16 years of love and fear and desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, the past could stay buried if you loved hard enough. But the past never stayed buried. That was the lesson she should have learned at Samaran Pass. The past was patient and relentless, and it always came home. She did not hear the sound at first, too lost in grief. But training asserted itself through emotion, and suddenly she was aware of noise from the stable. Not Ash Wynn's normal sounds. Something wrong. Delaney was moving before thought completed, rifle in hands, out the door and across the yard in seconds that felt like hours. The stable door stood open. Inside empty. Ash Wynn was gone. No signs of struggle, no broken boards, no blood. The stallion had been led away calm and cooperative by someone he trusted, or someone who knew exactly how to handle a horse trained to military precision, pinned to the empty stall door, catching lamplight like a beacon. Another note, another silver thread. This time the words hit harder than bullets. The horse was your husband's. The girl is my blood. You have 3 days to bring her to Devil's Crossing. Come alone, or I take her myself. S.C. Delaney stared at the initials that the threat made real and specific at the countdown that had begun, behind her footsteps. She spun rifle rising, then lowered it as Lily appeared in the doorway. The girl's face was streaked with tears, her eyes red from crying, but her expression held determination instead of defeat. I'm sorry I ran. Lily, it's not safe here. You need to go back to Iris. No. Lily moved closer, looking past Delaney to the empty stall. Ash Wynn's gone. Yes. Because of me. Because of choices I made 16 years ago. Lily reached out, took the note from the stall door, read it. When she looked up, her eyes held questions that demanded answers. S.C. Who is that? And here in the empty stable with her world collapsing and time running out, Delaney made the choice she had avoided for 16 years, the choice to trust truth over protection. Silas Kane, she said, voice steady despite everything breaking inside her. Your biological grandfather. The words hung in the air between them like a verdict waiting to be read. Lily's face went through a dozen expressions in as many seconds. Shock, confusion, anger, fear, and finally something harder to define. Something that looked almost like recognition, as if a piece of a puzzle she had not known was incomplete had just locked into place. I have a grandfather. By blood, yes. And he wants me back. He thinks I stole you. Thinks I kidnapped you from family. Lily's grip on the note tightened, crumpling the edges. Did you... The question deserved honesty no matter how complicated. Your mother begged me to take you, to keep you away from Silas Kane's world. She died making me promise. So no, I didn't steal you. But to him, to blood family, who never got to know you, who spent 16 years searching, it probably looks the same. The silence that followed was broken only by wind through the empty stable and the distant call of a nightbird hunting. Then Lily said, I want to meet him. Delaney's heart stopped. Lily, no, you don't understand what you're asking. You're right, I don't understand. I don't understand why my mother ran. I don't understand why this man spent 16 years looking for me. I don't understand who I really am, or where I came from, or why everything I thought was true is actually a lie. Lily's voice rose pain and anger, mixing into something sharp enough to cut. But he's my grandfather, my blood, and maybe, just maybe he has answers you can't or won't give me. He's dangerous. So were you, apparently. U.S. Marshal, tracker, killer of men who came for me. Lily's eyes blazed. I've spent 16 years with a dangerous woman, and I'm still standing. Maybe danger runs in the family. The truth of it hit like a slap. Delaney wanted to argue to explain that Silas Kane's danger was different, darker rooted in choices that placed profit over people and power over peace. But looking at Lily at 16 years old and demanding her right to know her own story, Delaney recognized something she had been blind to. This girl was no longer the 3-year-old who needed protection from truth. She was becoming someone who deserved truth, even when it hurt. If I take you to him, Delaney said carefully, there's no guarantee we both come back. Then don't take me, let me go alone. Absolutely not. Then we go together, your choice. It was not really a choice, and they both knew it. Delaney could lock Lily in the cabin ride to Devil's Crossing alone, face Silas Kane with violence or negotiation or some combination of both. Could handle this the way she had handled everything for 16 years by herself, carrying burden no one else should have to touch. But doing so would only prove Lily right. Would confirm that Delaney did not trust her, did not respect her growing into someone capable of facing hard truths. And it would mean losing what little trust remained between them. We go together, Delaney said, but we do it my way. We talk to Ezra first. We prepare. We don't ride into this blind. Lily nodded once, sharp and decisive. Agreed. They stood in the empty stable, mother and daughter by choice, if not blood balanced on the knife edge of a future neither could predict. Outside, the Arizona night pressed close, full of secrets and old sins and reckonings too long delayed. Somewhere in that darkness, Silas Kane waited, and in 3 days they would ride to meet him. Morning arrived cold and sharp, the kind of desert dawn that promised heat later but delivered clarity now. Delaney had not slept. She sat on the porch steps, rifle across her knees, watching the eastern sky shift from black to purple to the pale blue of old porcelain. Lily emerged from the cabin behind her, wrapped in a blanket, despite the woman's insistence she rest inside. They had not spoken since the stable. Words felt inadequate against the magnitude of what lay ahead, so they settled into silence instead, two people occupying the same space but inhabiting different futures. The sound of hoofbeats broke the quiet. 2 riders approaching from town, moving with purpose, but not urgency. Delaney recognized Sheriff Ezra Thorne's steady seat in the saddle. The second rider took a moment longer to place than resolved into Dr. Iris Calloway medical bag, strapped behind her saddle expression set in lines that suggested she had come prepared for resistance. Thorne dismounted first, moving with the careful deliberation of a man whose joints complained about mornings. Iris followed her dark eyes, taking in the scene with professional assessment. The empty stable. The exhaustion evident in Delaney's posture. Lily's tear-stained face. "She told you," Iris said. Not a question. Lily nodded, pulling the blanket tighter. Thorne's weathered face creased with something that might have been sympathy if sympathy did not require distance. How much enough? Delaney stood, every muscle protesting the movement after a night of stillness. She knows about Silas Kane, about Clara, about who she really is. And she knows about the demand. Iris moved to Lily's side, professional instinct overriding personal boundaries as she checked the girl's pupils, pressed fingers to her wrist to measure pulse. 3 days to Devil's Crossing. We're going. Lily's voice held steel that had not been there yesterday, tempered overnight in the forge of revelation. Both of us, together. Thorne and Iris exchanged a look weighted with volumes of unspoken concern. Lily? Thorne began. You don't understand what you're proposing. Silas Kane is not a man you meet unprepared. He's spent 16 years building a criminal empire, insulating himself with men who kill without hesitation, creating networks that reach into 3 territories. Walking into his territory is walking into a trap. Then we spring it carefully. Delaney's tone carried the flat certainty of someone who had already calculated odds and accepted them. But we're going. The question is whether you help us prepare or we do this alone. The silence stretched. A hawk called overhead, sharp and piercing. Somewhere distant, a door slammed. The ordinary sounds of morning felt surreal against the gravity of their situation. Iris broke first. I'm coming with you. No. Delaney and Thorne spoke simultaneously. Yes. Iris's jaw set in the stubborn line that had won 100 arguments over 2 decades of frontier medicine. If this goes badly, and it will, you'll need a doctor. More importantly, you'll need a witness. Someone neutral who can testify to what happens. There won't be a trial if we're dead. Then I'll testify at your funeral and make sure everyone knows the truth. Iris's dark eyes blazed. You don't get to shut me out of this, Delaney. Lily's my patient. Has been since she was 6 years old with pneumonia that should have killed her. I've invested too much in keeping her alive to let you ride into danger without backup. Thorne cleared his throat. There's something you need to know, something I should have told you years ago, but I was protecting people who are beyond protection now. He reached into his coat, withdrew an envelope yellowed with age, edges soft from handling. The paper trembled slightly in his weathered hands. Rowan gave this to me the night before Cimarron Pass. Said if anything happened to him, I was to deliver it to Silas Kane. I never did. Kept it locked in my safe for 8 years, telling myself I was preventing more violence. But maybe I was just a coward. Delaney took the envelope. Her name was written across the front in Rowan's careful script. Below it another name, Silas. Why now? Her voice barely registered above a whisper. Because hiding truth doesn't protect anyone. It just delays the reckoning. Thorne met her eyes. And because you deserve to know what Rowan wanted to say before he died. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Delaney turned it over, saw the seal still intact, the pressed wax bearing Rowan's martial insignia. Breaking it felt like violating something sacred, a final message held in amber for 8 years waiting. Lily moved to her side. What does it say? I don't know, haven't opened it yet. Do it now, please. Delaney's fingers traced the seal, remembering the last time she had seen it pressed. Rowan at his desk melting wax over candle flame, marking documents with the authority of federal law. He had been meticulous about seals, said they mattered because they made promises visible. She broke it. The letter inside was written on both sides of a single sheet, ink slightly faded but still legible. Rowan's handwriting precise and careful, the penmanship of a man who understood that written words outlasted spoken ones. She read aloud, To my brother Silas. If you are reading this, I am gone, and you are angry. I know you, brother. Know how rage burns in you like fever, how it consumes reason and leaves only ash. Before that rage destroys what little remains between us, hear me. Clara Bennett came to me 6 months ago, terrified. Said your men were hunting her because she knew too much about the smuggling operation. Said Marcus's death was not the accident you claimed, that he discovered something that made him dangerous to the network you built. She showed me bruises. Told me stories about the life you forced her into after Marcus died. The threats if she took Lily and ran. The promises that the girl would be raised in the family business whether Clara agreed or not. I wanted to believe she was lying. Wanted to think my brother, my blood, the boy I grew up with, who swore we would always choose right over easy, could not have become the man she described. But I saw her eyes, Silas. Saw the truth fear tells when words might lie. She wrote her wishes. Legal document witnessed and notarized. Gave Delaney Garrett full guardianship if anything happened. Not because she hated you, but because she loved Lily more than she feared your retribution. I helped her hide. Gave her money for passage. Promised I would keep Lily safe if the worst happened. The worst happened. Your men found her at Samaran Pass. I do not know if you ordered it or if they acted alone, but the result is the same. Clara died begging Delaney to protect her daughter from growing up in blood. Delaney made that promise. I witnessed it, and I am asking you as your brother to honor Clara's choice, even if you cannot honor mine. Lily deserves light, Silas. She deserves school and friends and a future not shaped by violence and secrets. Delaney can give her that. You cannot. Not because you lack love, but because you chose a path that makes love dangerous. Let her go, brother. Let Lily grow up free of the weight we carry. Give her the chance we never had to become someone without blood on her hands. If you cannot do this for me, do it for Marcus. He would have wanted his daughter safe more than he wanted revenge or justice or any of the things that drive men like us. Do not blame Delaney. She is the finest person I know. She will raise Lily with honor and care and all the love a child deserves. Blame me if you must blame someone. I made this choice. I bear this weight. Your brother always, even when you cannot be mine. Rowan. The silence after Delaney finished reading stretched like wire-pulled taut, ready to snap. Lily had tears streaming down her face. Iris's hand covered her mouth. Thorn looked older somehow, as if the weight of having kept this letter hidden had aged him and its release allowed that age to show. He knew. Lily's voice broke on the words. Uncle Rowan knew my mother. Tried to help her. He wasn't just Mama's husband, he was my protector too. Delaney folded the letter carefully as if rough handling might damage the memory it contained. Ezra, why keep this from Silas for 8 years? Because I was afraid. The admission cost him visibly. Afraid that giving Silas this letter would make him see Rowan's death as the ultimate betrayal, brother choosing duty and a promise to a dying woman over blood loyalty. I thought keeping it hidden might let the wound heal. Wounds don't heal in darkness, Iris said quietly. They fester. I know that now. Thorn's hands trembled as he reached for the letter. Let me take it to him. Let me ride to Devil's Crossing first, show him what Rowan wanted him to know. Maybe it changes things. Maybe he'll understand that this was never about choosing sides, just about protecting a child. Or maybe it makes him angrier. Delaney's pragmatism cut through hope like a blade. Shows him that Rowan knew from the beginning helped hide Clara made you complicit in keeping Lily away from her blood family. Could go either way, Ezra. I have to try. Owe it to Rowan. Owe it to the boy Silas used to be. The boy Silas used to be. Delaney wondered what that boy looked like, whether any trace of him remained in the man who stole horses and made threats and demanded the return of granddaughters he had never known. Whether anyone survived their choices intact, or if transformation was always a kind of death slow and irreversible. Tell us about him. Lily's voice small but insistent. The boy he used to be? The man my grandmother married. I deserve to know who I'm riding to meet. Thorn settled onto the porch step, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory held too long. Silas Kane was 10 years old the first time I met him. Summer of 1845 down by the Rio Grande, where it curves through what used to be Mexican territory before the war made it ours. His mother, Tacala, was Mescalero Apache. Beautiful woman with eyes that saw through lies the way some people see through glass. She had married a white trader named Daniel Kane for protection more than love. Apaches were being pushed off their lands, killed, or driven into Mexico. Marriage to a white man with money meant survival for her son. He paused, pulling a cigarette from his pocket, lighting it with practiced ease. The smoke rose lazy in the still morning. Daniel already had a son from his first marriage, Rowan. 12 years old, serious even then with this sense of right and wrong that was absolute. Black and white, no room for gray. When Daniel married Tacala, those two boys became brothers whether they liked it or not. Did they, Lily asked. Like it? At first, no. Rowan saw Silas as an intruder. Silas saw Rowan as the reason his mother had to pretend to be someone she was not, but Tacala was wise. She made them work together, hunt together, depend on each other. And slowly over months that turned to years they became what she intended. Brothers. Real ones. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals only it could sense. Thorn watched it, eyes distant with recollection. I came into the picture when I was 13. My father was cavalry stationed at Fort Selden. He drank too much and hit too hard, and one day I decided I would rather risk the desert than face his fists again. Ran. Made it maybe 20 miles before dehydration started killing me. That's where they found me. Rowan and Silas out hunting. They could have left me. Should have, probably. White boy with a cavalry father was dangerous for an Apache woman and her mixed blood son. But they didn't leave you. No, brought me home. Tacala nursed me back to health. Taught me to track, to read sign, to understand that the desert talks if you know how to listen. She saved my life in ways that went beyond just keeping me breathing. The cigarette burned down. Thorn stubbed it out on the porch rail. We made a pact, the three of us. Summer of 1847, cut our palms with a hunting knife, pressed them together, swore we would be brothers forever. Blood brothers. Swore we would protect each other, choose each other, never let the world split us apart no matter what came. What happened? Delaney asked, though she suspected she knew. The world came. Daniel Kane died in 1850. Cholera. Left Rowan his trading business and enough money to make a future. Left Silas and Takala nothing, because they were not legally family, just the Indian woman and her half-breed son. Rowan tried to share, but the law said he couldn't. Property rights, inheritance law, all of it designed to keep people separated by blood purity. Bitterness crept into his voice. Takala died a year later. Grief, people said, but I think it was heartbreak. Watching her son lose his inheritance, lose his future because his skin was darker and his mother's people were being killed or driven away. Silas was 16, angry, lost, and suddenly very alone. Except for you and Rowan. Except for us. We tried, Delaney. God knows we tried. But Rowan had responsibilities of business to run expectations from the white community that adopted him as one of their own. And I was nobody, just a runaway cavalry brat with no prospects. We could not give Silas what he needed most. Justice, belonging, a world that saw him as something other than a problem to be managed or eliminated. The story was taking shape, now puzzle pieces falling into place to reveal a picture both tragic and inevitable. So he chose another path, Delaney said. He chose survival, fell in with men who smuggled goods across the border, made money, made a name for himself. By the time he was 20, Silas Kane was known from El Paso to Tucson as someone you did not cross. By 25, he had built an empire on the margins where law enforcement could not reach. By 30, he had a wife, a son named Marcus, and a reputation that made sheriffs and marshals nervous. Thorne met Delaney's eyes. But he never forgot us. Never forgot the boys who swore blood oaths by a river before the world taught us that blood means different things to different people. When Rowan became a marshal, Silas left him alone. Respected the choice even if he disagreed with it. When I became sheriff, he made sure his operations did not touch my territory. That was the deal. The promise we kept even after everything else broke. Until Samaran Pass. Until Rowan helped Clara hide. Until Silas's men killed the woman his son loved and orphaned, the granddaughter he had never been allowed to know. Until all those old promises shattered against new loyalties and someone had to choose. Lily wiped at her eyes, voice thick. And Uncle Rowan chose me. He chose you, and it cost him everything. The morning had advanced while they talked. Sun climbing higher, heat beginning to assert itself the way desert heat always did, patient and relentless. Time was passing, 3 days becoming 2.5, the clock running toward confrontation whether they were ready or not. Delaney stood, decision crystallizing. We leave in 2 hours. Iris, you are coming, whether I like it or not, so prepare accordingly. Ezra, you ride ahead with Rowan's letter. Get to Silas first, show him what his brother wanted him to know. Maybe it helps. Maybe it makes things worse. Either way, we need him to understand that this was never about spite or theft, just about keeping a promise. She turned to Lily. And you, we are riding into danger, real danger. The kind that does not care about good intentions or righteous causes. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. No arguments, no debates. I need to know you will listen. Lily's blue eyes met hers. Clara's eyes filled with steel that was all her own. I'll listen. But Mama, I'm not a child anymore. And I'm tired of being protected from my own story. The words hung between them, a boundary drawn and a future defined. Delaney recognized that look. She had worn it herself once younger, but no less certain the day she decided to become a marshal instead of staying safe. Some transformations could not be prevented, only witnessed. They prepared in silence, each lost in thoughts too complex for easy articulation. Delaney cleaned weapons with practiced efficiency, checking loads, testing mechanisms, ensuring everything functioned because survival often depended on details too small to seem important until they mattered absolutely. Lily watched, absorbing lessons in preparation that no school would teach. Iris packed medical supplies with grim competence gauze and laudanum and instruments designed to repair damage weapons caused. Thorne left first, carrying Rowan's letter in his saddlebag like a holy relic, riding toward Devil's Crossing with the weight of 8 years' silence finally lifted. They watched him go, a lone figure against the vast emptiness of desert morning. Then they followed. The ride to Devil's Crossing normally took 2 days at steady pace. They pushed harder, making the distance in 1.5 days, camping one night in a narrow canyon where rock walls provided protection from wind and unwanted observation. Around the small fire-eating jerky and hardtack that tasted of dust and desperation, they spoke little. But in the silence, Delaney found herself remembering. She was 38 again, tracking 3 men across terrain that should have hidden them but could not hide from someone who read ground, like prophets read omens. Rowan beside her, solid and certain, the kind of partner who made you brave because you knew he would be there when bullets started flying. They had been married 5 years, had wanted children but accepted that some blessings came in forms you did not expect. Then Clara appeared running from Silas's men with a 3-year-old daughter and terror in her eyes. Rowan had wanted to help immediately. Delaney hesitated. Getting involved in family disputes, even criminal family disputes, complicated things in ways that ended badly. But Clara showed them the bruises, told them about Marcus's death, how he discovered the smuggling operation was funded through land fraud that displaced Apache families from their legal territories, how he confronted his father about betraying the very people his mother came from, how Silas had him killed for choosing conscience over profit. Clara ran because she knew she would be next, took Lily and disappeared into desert that swallowed people who did not know its secrets. Silas's men tracked her, because Silas never let anything go, never accepted that some people might choose differently than he demanded. And Rowan, who still loved his stepbrother despite everything that had broken between them, tried one last time to reach the boy he remembered, sent word through back channels that he wanted to talk. Meet at Samaran Pass. Neutral ground. Just the two of them brothers talking without guns or threats or intermediaries. Silas never came. His men did instead with orders to retrieve Clara and eliminate anyone who helped her. The ambush was sudden and total. Rifle fire from 3 sides cutting off escape, forcing them into a killing box where survival depended on luck more than skill. Rowan went down in the first volley bullet through the chest that made promises of medicine meaningless. Clara took 2 rounds trying to reach her daughter. Delaney returned fire, killing one man, wounding another, dragging Lily behind cover, while bullets chewed rock and flesh with equal indifference. And in the chaos, Clara dying, whispering her last request. Take her, keep her safe, don't let him raise her in blood. Delaney had promised. What else could you do when a mother died begging you to save her child? What kind of person heard that plea and said no? She kept the promise. Killed the 3rd man, escaped with Lily, buried Rowan in a grave she could never visit because visiting meant being found. Disappeared into the kind of anonymity that required constant vigilance and absolute commitment. 16 years. 16 years of looking over her shoulder. 16 years of teaching a child to call her mama while knowing the truth waited like a loaded gun behind every moment of peace. And now the truth had found them anyway. Lily's voice pulled her from memory. What are you thinking about? They were alone by the fire. Iris had moved to the canyon edge to stand watch, giving them privacy without making it obvious. Your mother, the day she died. Tell me about her. The real her, not just that she was scared and running. Delaney poked at the fire, watching sparks rise towards stars that seemed too distant to matter. She was 26. Blonde hair like yours, blue eyes that saw too much. She loved Marcus completely, the kind of love that does not calculate cost or consider consequences. When he died, part of her died too. But she kept going because you needed her to. Did she love me? More than her own life. That's not poetry, Lily. That's literal truth. She chose death protecting you over life surrendering you. That kind of love doesn't have words adequate to contain it. Lily pulled her knees to her chest, staring into flames. Do you think she would be angry that I want to meet Silas? The question cut deeper than Delaney expected. I think she would be terrified. But I also think she understood that you cannot protect people from their own blood forever. It finds them. The only question is whether they face it prepared or ignorant. Are we prepared? Delaney met her eyes across the fire. No, but we are together. That counts for something. They slept in shifts, Delaney taking first watch, Iris second, Lily third, despite protests that she was too young for such responsibility. But the girl insisted, and Delaney relented, recognizing that denying her agency now would only drive wedges deeper. Morning came cold and final, the kind of dawn that felt like last chances taking shape. They broke camp in silence, loaded horses with efficient movements born from shared purpose, and rode toward Devil's Crossing without looking back. The town appeared at midday, rising from heat shimmer like a mirage gaining substance. Devil's Crossing had been a mining settlement once back when men believed silver lived in these mountains worth the cost of digging. The mines played out. The miners left. What remained was a collection of weathered buildings arranged around a dry fountain testament to optimism abandoned. But the town was not empty. Horses aligned the main street. Men moved between buildings with the casual awareness of people comfortable with violence. And in the center of it all, standing beside the fountain like he owned the space and everyone in it, Silas Kane waited. He looked older than the wanted poster suggested. 58 years etched into weathered skin, the scar from temple to jaw standing white against sun-darkened face. His hair, once black, had gone iron gray. But his eyes, those remained sharp and assessing missing nothing. Beside him stood Sheriff Ezra Thorne, expression carefully neutral. And further back, half hidden in shadow, 3 other men. Professional, armed, waiting. Delaney, Lily, and Iris rode into town with hands visible, weapons holstered but accessible. The tension was immediate and absolute, the kind that preceded violence or miracles with equal probability. They stopped 20 feet from Silas, close enough to talk, far enough to react if talking failed. For a long moment no one spoke. Silas studied Lily with an intensity that made the girl shift in her saddle. Then his eyes moved to Delaney, and in them she saw calculation mixing with something harder to define. Recognition, perhaps. or respect between enemies who understood each other's capabilities. Delaney Garrett, his voice carried the gravel of too many years and too much wind, the woman who stole my granddaughter. The woman who saved your granddaughter from the life that killed your son. You don't know anything about my son. I know he died because he chose conscience over your empire. I know Clara ran because she was terrified of you. I know you have spent 16 years looking for someone who is never lost, just hidden from poison. Silas's jaw tightened. Poison? Interesting word from a woman who built her life on lies. Everything I told Lily was true where it mattered. I loved her, raised her, protected her. That's not lies. That's motherhood. You are not her mother. No. Delaney's voice softened. Clara was. And Clara begged me to take her daughter somewhere you could never find her. So I did. I kept my promise to a dying woman, and I would do it again. Movement behind them. Delaney's hand dropped to her revolver, but it was just more riders approaching. 5 men on horseback moving with military precision. The leader wore a badge that caught sunlight, Federal Marshal. Ezra Thorne stepped forward, face grim. Delaney, I need you to listen very carefully. These men have a warrant, federal warrant, for your arrest on charges of kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and interference with lawful custody. The world tilted. Delaney stared at Thorne, then at the approaching marshals, then at Silas Kane, whose expression revealed nothing. The lead marshal, a man in his 40s with hard eyes and harder jaw, reined in beside Silas. Mrs. Garrett, I am Marshal Wade Sullivan. You are under arrest. Dismount slowly and place your hands where I can see them. This is insane. Iris's voice cut sharp. Delaney saved that child. She didn't kidnap anyone. That's for a judge to decide, ma'am. Right now I have a legal complaint filed by Mr. Kane claiming his granddaughter was taken from lawful family without consent or due process. I have testimony that Mrs. Garrett fled jurisdiction in 1885 and has been evading federal authorities ever since, and I have orders to bring her in to face trial. Lily urged her horse forward, placing herself between Delaney and the marshals. I'm 19 years old enough to testify in court, old enough to say who I want to be with. Sullivan's expression softened fractionally. Miss Kane, your wishes will be heard, but legal proceedings require order. Right now that means your guardian answers charges. She's not my guardian legally. Lily's voice rang clear across the dusty street. I'm 19 years old enough to testify in court, old enough to say who I want to be with. There were no formal adoption papers, no court proceedings, because Mama was hiding from exactly this, from men who think blood matters more than love. Blood does matter. Silas spoke for the first time since the marshals arrived. Blood is everything, and you are my blood, Lillian, my granddaughter, the only family I have left after your father died and your mother ran. He took a step forward, and despite his age, despite the weathering and scars, Delaney could see the boy Ezra Thorne described, could see the child who lost his mother to heartbreak and his inheritance to prejudice and chose survival over surrender. I don't want revenge. Silas' continued, voice rough with emotion held too long. I want family. I want the chance to know my granddaughter before I die. That's all. That's everything. Lily looked at him, then at Delaney, then at the marshals, waiting with patient authority. When she spoke, her voice carried conviction that silenced protest. I'll go with you, the marshals, voluntarily. I'll be placed in territorial custody until there's a trial, and then I'll testify. I'll tell the court everything. About Mama saving me, about Clara begging her to hide me, about 16 years of love given freely without obligation, and then I'll choose, legally, publicly, where I belong. Lily, no. Delaney's protest came automatic and anguished. Yes. The girl's blue eyes held steel. This is my choice, Mama, my life, my story, and I'm tired of other people writing it for me. Marshal Sullivan considered, then nodded slowly. That's acceptable. Miss Kane comes into federal custody until trial. Mrs. Garrett remains free on her own recognizance of pending court proceedings. Mr. Kane agrees not to interfere with the legal process. Agreed. Silas's voice held satisfaction. Delaney wanted to shoot off his face, but Lily was dismounting, was walking toward the marshals with shoulders back and head high, was choosing a path Delaney could not follow without making everything worse. Their eyes met across 10 feet of dust and destiny. I love you, Delaney said, because what else mattered? I know, Lily replied. That's why I trust you to let me do this. Then she was mounted behind one of the deputy marshals riding away, and Delaney stood in the center of Devil's Crossing, watching the only family she had left disappear into afternoon heat shimmer. When they were gone, when dust settled and silence returned, Silas Kane spoke again. You and I are not finished, Delaney Garrett. She turned to face him, hand resting on her revolver eyes, promising violence if he pushed. We are absolutely finished. Lily made her choice. When the trial comes, she'll make it again, and no amount of legal maneuvering will change what 16 years of love built. Love. Silas's laugh carried bitterness. You think love is enough? Love didn't save Clara, didn't save Marcus, didn't save Rowan from dying because he chose a promise over his own survival. No. But love gave Lily 16 years of safety, of school and friends and a future not defined by your crimes. That's worth whatever comes next. They faced each other across the empty street, two people carrying grief too large for their frames, weighted by choices that could not be unmade and consequences that would not be avoided. Ezra Thorne stepped between them. This ends now. Both of you walk away. Let the law handle what violence cannot solve. The law, Silas spat the word like poison. The law that took my inheritance, that killed my mother's people, that made my son's death legal because he opposed the wrong powerful men. You have faith in the law, Ezra. After everything. I have faith in trying, in believing that civilization means something even when it fails us, in choosing order over chaos because chaos only breeds more chaos. As Silas looked at his old friend at the sheriff who had kept secrets for 8 years, and something shifted in his expression. Rowan's letter, you showed it to me. I did. And you think that changes anything? I think it should. I think knowing your brother tried to protect everyone that he died trying to find a way to honor both his promise to Clara and his love for you, that should matter. It matters. Silas's voice dropped to barely audible. It matters that Rowan betrayed me for strangers, that he chose duty over blood, that he died keeping my granddaughter from me while pretending it was for her own good. He turned away, shoulders rigid with controlled rage. Trial is in 2 weeks. Tucson Territorial Court. I will be there. I will testify. And I will win because the law for once is on my side. He walked away, his men falling into formation around him, and within minutes Devil's Crossing returned to its ghost town silence. Delaney stood in the street beside Ezra Thorne and Iris Calloway, 3 people who had tried to do right and watched everything go wrong anyway. What now? Iris asked. Now we prepare. Delaney's voice carried the flat certainty of someone past the point of doubt. We find every piece of evidence that proves Clara wanted Lily safe from Silas. We find witnesses who can testify to the life I gave that girl, and we win in court what we couldn't win with bullets. And if we lose, Delaney did not answer. Could not answer, because if they lost, if a judge decided blood trumped choice and 16 years of love meant nothing against biology and legal claims, then everything she had built, everything she had sacrificed, every promise she kept would collapse into ash. And she would have to decide whether to accept that or to run one more time, taking Lily into hiding so deep no one would ever find them. But running meant teaching Lily that love required constant flight, that safety demanded perpetual fear, that the only way to keep family together was to keep the world at bay. She had done that for 16 years. She could not do it for 16 more. So they would face the trial, face Silas Kane and federal law, and the question of what made someone family. They would present their truth against his and trust that justice existed somewhere in the machinery of courts and testimony. And if justice failed, then Delaney would remember that she was not just a mother who loved fiercely. She was Shadowstep, the tracker who never lost a trail, the marshal who never backed down, the woman who kept promises no matter the cost. And she would find a way. The sun beat down on Devil's Crossing as they prepared to leave. Behind them, the dry fountain stood as monument to ambitions that died when belief did. Ahead, 2 weeks until trial, 2 weeks to build a case, 2 weeks until Lily chose her future. Delaney mounted her horse, turned it toward home, and rode into afternoon light that promised heat before it delivered relief. Behind her, Silas Kane watched from a window, and in his eyes burned certainty that family would return to family, that blood called louder than promises, that 16 years of separation would end with reunion. Between them, Lily rode toward Tucson in federal custody, caught between 2 people who loved her in different ways, forced to become the judge of her own fate. The stage was set, the players positioned. The reckoning approached with the inevitability of seasons changing, and in 2 weeks everyone would learn whether love or blood defined family, whether promises kept mattered more than promises broken, whether the past could be escaped or only delayed. The answer waited in Tucson, where truth would face law, and someone would lose everything. 2 weeks felt like 2 years compressed into days that moved too fast and nights that lasted too long. Delaney spent the time gathering evidence that felt increasingly inadequate against the simple power of Silas Kane's claim: blood, biology, the undeniable fact that Lily was his granddaughter by every legal and genetic measure that mattered to courts and judges. She had testimony from townspeople who watched Lily grow up safe and loved. She had medical records from Dr. Iris Calloway documenting 16 years of care. She had school records showing a girl who excelled in mathematics and literature, who had friends and aspirations and a future built on foundation of stability. But she did not have the one thing that would settle everything: Clara's written wishes. Rowan had mentioned them in his letter to Silas. Said they existed witnessed and notarized, giving Delaney legal guardianship, but where he had hidden them remained a mystery that 8 years and countless searches had not solved. Delaney had torn apart every possession Rowan left behind, examined every paper searched, every logical and illogical hiding place. Nothing. The document existed somewhere in memory and intention, but not in the physical world where courts required proof. 3 days before the trial, Ezra Thorne appeared at the ranch. Just after dawn, his weathered face carrying an expression Delaney had learned to read as significant news delivered reluctantly. "Found something," he said without preamble, dismounting with the careful movements of a man whose body protested morning cold. "Or rather, Silas found something and asked me to bring it to you." He pulled a leather saddlebag from his horse, the kind used for long trail rides. Inside, wrapped carefully in oiled cloth, lay a small wooden box. The wood was dark walnut, inlaid with turquoise and patterns that spoke of Apache craftsmanship. Delaney recognized it immediately. That belonged to Takala, Silas's mother. It did! Thorne's expression was complex, mixing surprise with something like respect. When Silas took Ash Wind, he had his men strip the saddle, looking for whatever Rowan hid. They found this box built into the saddle tree itself. Custom work. The kind you'd commission from a master craftsman who knew how to hide things in plain sight. Delaney stared at the box, then at Thorne. "Silas found the evidence he was looking for and brought it to you. Said he wanted truth more than victory. That after hearing his brother's letter, after 16 years of rage and searching, he realized Clara's voice deserved to be heard, even if it destroyed his case." Thorne handed her the box. "Open it." Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth to protect against moisture and time, lay 2 items. The first was a legal document, yellowed but still legible, bearing official seals and signatures. Clara Bennett's last will and testament, written 3 months before Cimarron Pass, witnessed by a Tucson notary and a priest from the San Xavier Mission. The language was simple and absolute. "In the event of my death, I designate Delaney Garrett, U.S. Marshal, as legal guardian of my daughter, Lillian Clara Kane. It is my wish that Lily be raised away from the criminal enterprises of my father-in-law, Silas Kane, and that she be given opportunity for education and life free from violence. I make this choice of sound mind and clear conscience, knowing it will cause pain, but believing it necessary for my daughter's future." Signed, Clara Bennett Kane. Witnessed and notarized. Legal, binding, exactly what they needed. But it was the second item that stopped Delaney's breath. A small cylinder of the wax, the kind used in Edison's new recording machines. The type that captured sound and preserved it like insects in amber. Written on the side in Rowan's careful hand, Clara's testimony, April 1885. "Thorne, what is this?" "Only one way to find out. Iris has one of those phonograph machines at her clinic. Got it last year from a medical supply company back east. Uses it to record patient histories when she's too tired to write." They rode to town together, the box cradled carefully against Delaney's chest like it contained something more precious than evidence. Hope, perhaps. Or vindication. Or simply the voice of a dead woman who deserved to be heard. Iris's clinic smelled of carbolic and lavender, the strange combination she used to mask the harder odors of frontier medicine. The phonograph sat on her desk, brass horn gleaming in lamplight cylinder holder, empty and waiting. "You are certain you want to hear this?" Iris asked as she prepared the machine. "Sometimes the past should stay silent. The past is about to speak in a courtroom whether we're ready or not. Better to know what it says first." Iris placed the cylinder carefully onto the spindle, adjusted the reproducer wound, the spring mechanism with practiced turns. The machine came to life with gentle mechanical breathing. Then Clara's voice filled the room. 16 years dead but alive in the grooves pressed into wax by machinery that turned breath into permanence. Young, frightened, but absolutely certain, my name is Clara Bennett Kane. Today is April 14th, 1885. I am making this recording at the request of Marshal Rowan Garrett as testimony to my wishes regarding my daughter Lillian. A pause, the sound of breath gathered for difficult words. My husband Marcus died 6 months ago. The official report said accident, a fall from his horse while riding fence line. But I know the truth. Marcus discovered that his father's smuggling operation was funded through land fraud, stealing from Apache families, and selling to railroad companies. When he confronted Silas about betraying his own mother's people, they argued. 3 days later, Marcus was dead. I cannot prove it. Cannot take my suspicions to law enforcement because Silas Kane owns enough sheriffs and judges to make accusations that disappear. But I know in my heart that my husband was killed to silence him. Another pause. The sound of tears in her breathing. I am afraid. Afraid for myself, but more afraid for Lily. Silas has told me that she will be raised in the family business whether I agree or not, that she will learn the skills necessary to continue his empire, that my wishes as her mother matter less than his rights as her grandfather. I cannot allow that. Will not allow my daughter to grow up shaped by violence and greed and the kind of moral compromise that killed her father. So I am asking Marshal Garrett and his wife Delaney to help me disappear, to take Lily somewhere Silas cannot find her if anything happens to me. I am making this request of sound mind without coercion, knowing it will cause pain, but believing it necessary. If you are hearing this, I am likely dead. And if I am dead, it is because I chose to protect my daughter from the life that destroyed my husband. Clara's voice strengthened, taking on steel beneath the fear. Silas, if you are listening to this someday, know that I do not hate you. You loved Marcus. You love Lily. But love twisted by violence stops being love and becomes possession. I will not let my daughter be possessed by your empire. Let her go. Let her grow up free. Give her the chance. Marcus never had to choose her own path. To Lily, if you ever hear this, know that every choice I made was because I loved you more than my own life. Your father was a good man who tried to do right and paid for it. Be like him. Choose conscience over comfort. Choose light over shadow. And Delaney, thank you. For whatever you have given my daughter. For whatever sacrifices keeping her safe has required. Thank you for being the mother I could not live to become. The recording ended with a click that sounded like a door closing. Silence filled the clinic, heavy with the weight of a dead woman's wishes made undeniable. Iris wiped tears from her face with the back of her hand. Thorne stared at the machine as if it had performed miracle or curse, perhaps both. Delaney stood frozen. Clara's gratitude settling onto her shoulders like blessing or burden. This changes everything, Thorne said finally. Legal document and recorded testimony. No judge can ignore this. Silas will fight it. Say she was coerced or frightened into making accusations she could not prove. Then we let her words speak for themselves. Iris's voice carried physician's certainty. Sometimes truth needs no argument, just presentation. Thorne hesitated, then reached into his coat again. There's one more thing. Another letter. Sealed. Addressed to Lily, marked to be opened when she's grown. He held it up, showing Rowan's handwriting across the envelope. Rowan gave it to me the same night he gave me the letter to Silas. Asked me to keep it safe until the right time. Delaney's throat tightened. What does it say? Don't know. Never opened it. That's for Lily when she's ready. He tucked it back into his coat. But knowing Rowan, it'll matter. Everything he did mattered. The trial began on a Tuesday in Tucson Territorial Court. In a room that smelled of old wood and older compromises. Judge Samuel Harwood presided, a man in his 60s whose reputation suggested fairness tempered by pragmatism and occasional mercy when law allowed space for it. The case before him concerned custody of Lily and Clara Kane, nearly an adult at 19, but still technically a minor under territorial law until her 21st birthday. The courtroom filled beyond capacity. People stood along the walls, pressed into doorways, gathering outside to hear secondhand what happened inside. This was not merely a custody dispute. This was frontier drama made real, the kind of story that would be told and retold until facts blurred into legend. Silas Kane sat at the plaintiff's table with lawyers from Santa Fe men, whose expensive suits spoke of resources most defendants could not match. He wore simple clothing, dark and dignified, playing the role of grieving grandfather denied rightful family. Delaney sat at the defense table beside a lawyer. Thorne had found a young man named Benjamin Cross who compensated for limited experience with unlimited conviction. Iris sat directly behind them, moral support made visible. And in the witness section, under federal supervision, Lily waited. She looked older than her years. Something in her eyes suggested that the past 2 weeks in territorial custody had aged her in ways years of safety never could. She wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, hair pulled back and severe braid hands folded in her lap with composure that masked whatever emotions churned beneath. Judge Harwood gavelled the room to silence. This court will come to order. We are here to determine custody of Lily and Clara Kane, claimed by both her biological grandfather Silas Kane and her guardian of 16 years, Delaney Garrett. Mr. Brennan, you may present your opening statement. Silas's lead lawyer stood a man named Richard Brennan, whose silver hair and commanding presence filled the room effortlessly. His argument was simple and devastating. Blood mattered. Family mattered. A grandfather denied knowledge of his granddaughter for 16 years by a woman who took a child without legal authority, without formal adoption, without anything except a promise made in chaos. He painted Silas as victim, a man who lost his son, lost his daughter-in-law, and then lost his only remaining family to someone who disappeared into anonymity rather than face legal scrutiny. He did not mention Clara's fears, did not acknowledge Marcus's death as anything suspicious, did not suggest that Silas Kane might be anything other than grieving families seeking reunion. When he finished, the courtroom murmured approval. Blood made sense to people. Belonging made sense. The idea that grandchildren should know grandparents resonated in ways that complicated truth could not match. Benjamin Cross stood for the defense, young and obviously nervous, but his voice carried conviction that steadied as he spoke. Your Honor, this case is not about blood versus love, or family versus strangers. It is about honoring the clear documented wishes of a mother who knew her daughter's life depended on choices others might not understand. We will present evidence both written and recorded that proves Clara Bennett Kane wanted exactly what happened. That she begged for it. That she died grateful it would occur. He paused, letting the words settle. And we will show that the life Delaney Garrett gave Lillian Kane was exactly what her mother hoped for. Safety, education, the chance to become someone not defined by violence or criminal legacy. The trial proceeded through testimony. Character witnesses spoke to Lily's upbringing. Teachers described a bright student who excelled in school. Townspeople testified to seeing Delaney raise the girl with obvious love and appropriate care. But Silas's lawyers countered each witness with questions about legality. Was there formal adoption? Num. Were there court proceedings? Number. Did Mrs. Garrett have any legal authority to take a child and disappear? Num. The law was simple even when circumstances were complex. Then Silas himself took the stand. He spoke with quiet dignity, describing the pain of searching for 16 years. The private investigators hired, the false leads followed. The grief that accompanied every failed attempt to find his granddaughter. He did not rage, did not threaten. Simply presented himself as a man who wanted to know his only remaining family before death claimed him too. Mr. Kane, his lawyer asked, if the court grants you custody, what kind of life would you provide for Lillian? The kind Marcus would have wanted. Education, opportunity, knowledge of her heritage, both the parts that bring pride and the parts that require reckoning. I will not hide from my past, but I will not force her into it either. She deserves choice. That is all I ask. The chance to know her grandfather and decide for herself what family means. It was masterful performance. Cross-examination tried to crack the facade. Benjamin Cross asked about Marcus's death, about the land fraud operation, about whether Silas ever threatened Clara. But without proof, without witnesses willing to testify against a man whose reach extended across territories, the questions sounded like desperate accusations from a lawyer losing his case. Then it was the defense's turn. Benjamin Cross called Delaney to the stand. She told her story simply. Clara's dying request, Rowan's support, the decision to honor a mother's wishes, even when doing so meant hiding from law and scrutiny. 16 years of raising Lily as her own, not to replace Clara, but to give the child what her mother wanted most. Safety, love, future. But under cross-examination, Brennan tore into contradictions. Why not seek legal adoption if Clara's wishes were legitimate? Why hide unless consciousness of guilt demanded it? Why should promises made in KI override blood rights and legal procedure? Delaney had no good answers. Or rather, her answers made sense to her, but sounded weak when stripped of context and judged by people who had not stood in that moment when Clara died begging. The trial was slipping away. She could feel it in the way Judge Harwood listened in the murmurs from spectators and the sad certainty growing in Iris's expression. Then Cross stood and said, "Your Honor, the defense would like to present new evidence." A legal document and recorded testimony from Clara Bennett Kane made 3 months before her death, clearly stating her wishes regarding her daughter's guardianship. The courtroom erupted. Brennan objected immediately, claiming documents appearing this late should be inadmissible. But Judge Harwood, curiosity overriding procedure, allowed it. They brought in Iris's phonograph, set it up in the silent courtroom, placed Clara's wax cylinder carefully onto the spindle, and for the second time in 3 days, Clara Bennett Kane spoke. Her voice filled the courtroom, young and frightened and absolutely certain. Every word carried weight of conviction no living testimony could match. Dead women do not lie. Dead women have no motive except truth. When the recording ended, silence held like breath before storm. Silas Kane sat frozen at his table, face drained of color. His lawyer shuffled papers with hands that trembled slightly. The spectators sat stunned. Clara's words settling into their understanding like stones into water, rippling outward to change everything. Judge Harwood spoke into the silence. "This court will take a 30-minute recess while I review the legal documents submitted as evidence." They stood, filed out, regrouped in hallways buzzing with speculation. Delaney found herself face to face with Silas Kane in a corridor emptied by chance or design. They stood 3 feet apart, two people divided by 16 years and choices that could not be unmade. "You knew," he said, voice raw. "You knew what she thought of me." I knew what she feared. She lied. I never threatened her. Never told her Lily would be raised in the business. I wanted grandchildren who could choose their own path, break free of what I built. Then why did Clara run, Silas? Why did she die terrified that you would take Lily? He had no answer. Or rather, the answer lived in the space between intentions and perceptions, between what he meant and what Clara understood. "I loved Marcus," he said finally. "He was my son, my hope. When he died, part of me died too. And when Clara took Lily and vanished, the rest of me died. I've been searching for 16 years not to possess a child, but to know the only family I have left. I believe you. But believing your intentions does not change what Clara feared, does not undo 16 years of her daughter growing up safe from that fear." They stood in weighted silence, two people carrying grief too large for their bodies, shaped by loss into forms neither chose. "The recording," Silas said. "She mentioned land fraud, money from stealing Apache lands to fund my operation." "Yes. She was right. That is how I built my empire. On theft from my mother's people, the very people whose blood runs in my veins." His laugh carried bitterness sharp enough to cut. "Ironic, is it not, the half-Apache smuggler getting rich by betraying Apaches? Did you have Marcus killed?" The question hung between them, dangerous and necessary. Silas met her eyes. In his gaze, she saw something that might have been truth or might have been the lie he told himself until it became truth. No, but I did not protect him when men under my command decided his conscience made him dangerous. That is the same as pulling the trigger, just slower, cowardly. The admission cost him visibly. Delaney watched something break in his expression, a dam holding back 16 years of guilt finally cracking under pressure of spoken truth. I cannot undo what happened to Marcus. Cannot bring Clara back or erase the fear that drove her to run. But I can try to be the grandfather Clara never believed I could be. Can try to give Lily choice without coercion. Can try to break the cycle of violence that destroyed my family. Pretty words, Silas. But how do I trust them? You don't. You trust Lily. Let her decide. Not now when emotions run high and lawyers manipulate truth, but later, when she knows me, knows you, knows all of it and can choose with clear eyes. Before Delaney could respond, the bailiff called them back. Court was resuming. Judge Harwood sat behind his bench with the weight of Solomon facing impossible choices. He looked older than when the trial started, as if hearing Clara's voice had aged him. I have reviewed the evidence presented. The legal document is properly witnessed and notarized. The recorded testimony, while unusual, provides clear insight into Clara Bennett Kane's state of mind and wishes regarding her daughter. Combined, they present compelling argument that Mrs. Garrett acted in accordance with the mother's documented desires. He paused. The courtroom held its breath. However, 16 years have passed. The child in question is now nearly an adult, and the law recognizes that blood family has rights that must be weighed against even the clearest wishes of deceased parents. Delaney's heart sank. Therefore, I am prepared to rule in favor of neither party until I hear from the person this case most affects. Miss Lillian Kane, please approach the bench. Lily stood, walked forward with spine straight and head high. She looked small in the formal courtroom, young despite her composure. But when she spoke, her voice carried authority that belied her years. Your Honor, I would like to make a statement. Proceed. Lily turned to face the courtroom, addressing judge and spectators and the two people fighting over her future with equal directness. My name is Lillian Clara Kane. I am 19 years old. For all of those 16 years since I was 3, I have called Delaney Garrett my mother. Because that is what she has been. Not the woman who gave birth to me. That was Clara Bennett. But the woman who raised me, protected me, loved me without obligation or expectation. That was Delaney. Her voice strengthened. I learned 3 weeks ago that everything I believed about my life was incomplete. That I have a grandfather. That my biological mother died running from him. That the woman I call Mama is Mama by choice, not blood. She looked at Silas. Grandfather, I do not know you. Cannot know you from testimony and recordings and stories others tell. You say you want family. You say you want to give me choice. But choice requires knowledge, and knowledge requires time. She said, Then she turned to Delaney. Mama, you say you want to protect me. And you have. For 16 years you gave me safety and love and the kind of childhood Clara wanted for me. But I am not a child anymore. And protection cannot mean hiding truth forever. Lily faced Judge Harwood again. I choose neither, and both. I choose to stay with Delaney Garrett because she has earned the right to be called my mother through 16 years of proof. But I also choose to know my grandfather, to hear his story, to decide for myself whether the man Clara feared still exists or if grief and time have changed him. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Harwood gavelled for silence. Lily continued. This family was torn apart by choices made in fear and anger and desperation. I will not let it stay torn apart by pride or legal precedent or people choosing seats. So here is what I propose. Legal guardianship remains with Delaney Garrett, but visitation rights are granted to Silas Kane. And in 2 years, when I am 18 and legally an adult, I will make final choice about what family means and who belongs in mine. She paused, then added softly, Clara died wanting me safe. Delaney gave me that safety, but Clara also died wanting me to have choice. This is my choice. To build bridges instead of burning them. To believe that people can change. To hope that family broken can become family healed. The silence that followed held something sacred, as if the courtroom had witnessed not merely testimony but transformation. A girl becoming woman. A victim becoming agent. Powerlessness becoming power. Judge Harwood sat back, expression suggesting he had not expected this and was recalculating accordingly. Miss Kane, you understand what you are proposing joint custody in effect with primary guardianship remaining with Mrs. Garrett, but visitation rights granted to your grandfather. Yes, Your Honor, with conditions. Grandfather Silas agrees to cooperate with federal investigation into his business practices, agrees to testify against anyone involved in illegal activities, and agrees that our relationship begins with honesty, not manipulation or coercion. Every eye turned to Silas Kane. He stood slowly, an old man carrying the weight of choices made decades ago, shaped by loss into something he never meant to become. When he spoke, his voice cracked with emotion. I agree to all of it. The investigation, the testimony, the honesty. He looked at Lily. Your mother was right to fear me. Right to protect you, but she was also right to believe people deserve chance at redemption. I have spent 16 years searching for you. I will spend however many years remain proving I deserve to know you. Judge Harwood nodded slowly. Then this court rules as follows. Legal guardianship of Lily and Clara Kane is granted to Delaney Garrett, formalizing the relationship that has existed for 16 years. Visitation rights are granted to Silas Kane to be arranged through mutual agreement and subject to review if circumstances warrant. Furthermore, Mr. Kane is directed to cooperate fully with federal authorities regarding allegations of criminal enterprise. The gavel came down. The courtroom exhaled. And somewhere, in the sound of relief and surprise and confusion, Delaney heard Clara's voice again, not from recording but from memory. Thank you for being the mother I could not live to become. She had kept her promise. Against law and logic and 16 years of fear, she had kept it. And now, impossibly, everyone had won something, even if no one got everything. After the courtroom emptied, after lawyers packed papers and spectators dispersed to spread news, Delaney found herself alone with Lily in the hallway outside. They stood awkwardly, months of tension and weeks of separation, creating distance that felt impossible to cross. Then Lily said, I meant what I told the judge. You are my mother. Blood does not change that. But blood matters too. I understand that now. It matters, but it does not define. You taught me that even when you were not trying to. They came together in an embrace that held 16 years of love and 3 weeks of heartbreak, two people finding their way back to each other across distance measured in honesty finally achieved. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby girl. And in that moment, mother and daughter by choice, they began the work of healing. 6 months later, autumn painted the Arizona landscape in shades of gold and rust. The Garrett Ranch looked different, expanded by new construction. A second cabin stood where the old equipment shed had been built with care and meant for long-term use. Silas Kane lived there now. The first month had been hardest. He kept to himself, working with the horses from dawn to dusk, sleeping in the old equipment shed, earning presence through labor rather than claiming it through blood right. Lily visited him cautiously, conversations stiff and careful, both of them navigating unfamiliar territory. The second month brought thaw. Silas helped with fence repairs, told stories about Takala, about young Rowan and Marcus, about the boy he had been before choices hardened him into someone else. Lily listened, asked questions, began to see the grandfather behind the legend. By the third month, she asked if he wanted to stay. Build a cabin. Make this arrangement something more permanent than probation. Now 6 months had passed, and the cabin stood complete. The federal investigation had taken 3 months. His testimony brought down a network of corruption reaching into territorial government land offices and railroad companies. Men more powerful than him faced prison. His own sentence was commuted in exchange for cooperation, but he spent 90 days in territorial jail as consequence for crimes no amount of testimony could erase. When he was released, Lily asked if he wanted to come to the ranch. Not to stay, just to visit. See where she grew up. Meet the life Delaney had built. The visit stretched into a week, then a month, now 6 months, and no one spoke of him leaving. He worked with the horses, his mother's gift for understanding animals still present, despite decades of choosing other paths. He cooked meals with recipes Takala taught him before grief claimed her. He told stories about Marcus, about Rowan, about boys who swore brotherhood before the world taught them that some promises break against reality. And slowly, carefully, he became what he claimed he wanted to be. Grandfather, family, someone earning belonging through daily proof instead of demanding it through blood right. Ezra Thorne visited, often old friendship rekindling now that secrets no longer stood between them. They sat on the porch in evenings, two old men who had survived everything except time's advance, sharing silence that spoke of peace hard won. Iris Calloway came weekly, ostensibly to check on Lily, but really to monitor Silas's integration physician's instinct, watching for signs of relapse into old patterns. So far he showed none. And Lily thrived. She studied with Iris, learning medicine and the art of healing what violence broke. She practiced tracking with Delaney and Silas, learning skills from both sides of her heritage. She talked about college, about becoming a doctor, about futures that seemed impossible 3 months ago. On a Saturday afternoon in October, Delaney found an envelope on her pillow. The envelope Ezra Thorne had mentioned months ago, the one Rowan entrusted to him before Cimarron Pass. She recognized Rowan's careful handwriting immediately. Inside a letter on paper that showed its age, ink faded, but still legible. To Lily to be opened when you are grown. She recognized Rowan's hand immediately. Recognized, too, that this letter was different from the one to Silas. This one was personal. Private. Meant for the girl he helped save. Her hands trembled as she read, My dear Lily, if you are reading this, you are old enough to understand complicated truths. Old enough to know that the adults in your life made choices they hoped were right, but could never be certain. I am your Uncle Rowan. I helped your mother hide you because she begged me to, because I believe children deserve safety more than adults deserve certainty, Because your father Marcus was my brother in all ways that mattered, and honoring his memory meant protecting his daughter. Your biological father was a good man who made one fatal mistake. He chose conscience over silence. In a better world, that would have been rewarded. In ours, it got him killed. Your mother Clara loved you more than breathing. Everything she did, every choice she made came from that love. When she died grateful that Delaney would keep you safe. And Delaney. She's the strongest person I will ever know. She could have walked away. Could have told your mother that promises made in crisis are not binding. But she kept faith. Gave you 16 years of love and protection at cost to her own safety and peace. You are made of all of them, Lily. Marcus's conscience. Clara's fierce love. Delaney's unwavering loyalty. And yes, Silas's survival instinct and determination. That is not weakness, that is strength. The ability to hold contradictions without breaking. To love people who made terrible choices without excusing those choices. To forgive without forgetting. I hope you have that strength. Hope you use it to build bridges where others built walls. To choose healing over revenge. To believe that broken families can become whole again if people care more about future than past. The silver dun stallion Ashwind was always meant for you. I bought him thinking he would be for my child, but Delaney and I never had children of our own. When you came into our lives, I knew he was meant for you. Strong, beautiful, free. Everything I hope you become. Write him with joy. Live with courage. Love without fear. Your Uncle Rowan Delaney read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she folded it carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and went to find Lily. She found her in the corral with Ashwind, the silver stallion, now fully hers by every measure that mattered. Silas watched from the fence, offering quiet guidance about horse handling, grandfather teaching granddaughter skills his own mother taught him. It was ordinary, peaceful. The kind of moment that would never make stories but mattered more than drama ever could. "Lily?" Delaney called. "Come here. There's something you need to read." The girl approached, curious. Delaney handed her Rowan's letter without explanation. Lily read in silence while Delaney and Silas watched. When she finished, she looked up with eyes wet but smiling. "He knew. Uncle Rowan knew I would be okay. He had faith. In you. In all of us." Then Lily looked at the letter again, then at Silas, then at Delaney. "Can I keep this, it's yours, was always meant for you." That evening they sat together on the porch. 4 people who should have been impossible. Delaney and Lily, Silas and Ezra, family by choice and blood and the hard work of choosing reconciliation over resentment. Talk turned to the future. Lily spoke about medical school. Silas mentioned a foundation he wanted to establish returning stolen lands to Apache families, funded by selling off his legitimate business interests. Ezra talked about retirement, about maybe writing down the stories before memory failed. And Delaney listened content to let conversation flow around her, grateful for peace she had not dared to hope possible. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Lily leaned against Delaney's shoulder. "Mama, do you think Clara would be happy seeing this?" Delaney thought about the question. About Clara dying terrified. About 16 years of hiding. About trials and testimony and the hard work of building family from wreckage. "I think," she said finally, "Clara would be grateful that you survived, that you thrived, that you chose forgiveness when you could have chosen anger. Yes, I think she would be very happy." Ashwind nickered from the corral silver coat, catching last light. The sound carried promise of tomorrow, of rides not yet taken, of futures not yet written. "I want to help," Lily said suddenly, "with grandfather's foundation, returning lands, making things right." Silas looked at her, surprise, mixing with pride. That would mean hard work. Confronting people who will not want to give up what they stole, facing history that is ugly and complicated. "I know, but Uncle Rowan said I was made of all of you. Marcus's conscience, Clara's love, Mama's loyalty. Your determination. Maybe I can use all of that to make something good." Silence held while they absorbed this. Then Ezra laughed, a sound rusty from disuse but genuine. "Clara Bennett would have loved seeing you like this. Fierce and certain and ready to fight for what is right." "Then let's make her proud," Lily said. "All of us. Together." And in that moment, on a porch in Arizona, as evening became night and family became something larger than blood or law could define, they made a promise. To choose healing over hurt. To build instead of destroy. To believe that redemption was possible for everyone willing to do the work. It would not be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But they would face it together, family forged from fire and choice and the kind of love that kept promises even when keeping them cost everything. The stars emerged overhead, countless and bright. Somewhere among them, Clara and Rowan and Marcus watched. And maybe, just maybe, they smiled, because their daughter lived, thrived, chose grace. And that was worth every sacrifice, every hard choice, every moment of fear and doubt and desperate hope. The past could not be changed, but the future remained unwritten. And 4 people gathered on a porch in the fading light, picked up pens and began to write it together. With love. With forgiveness. with faith that broken things could heal if you cared enough to mend them. The end of one story, the beginning of another, and in between the kind of peace that makes everything worthwhile.